Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at Edmund Ironside, a true chronicle history. War hath made all friends. That's a lovely title, War Hath Made All Friends. It's a tricky play to precisely date. I'm just going to throw in somewhere in the 1590s as a reasonable starting point for where this script started. It may have been adjusted over time when it eventually appears in manuscript form later on. But it doesn't really matter to us because all we're really interested in is how the play functions and how it functions for us today. So to read through this history play, we have this wonderful room of readers. So reading Edmund as well as Edrick and Bailiffs is
me, Briony Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire.
Reading Canute or Canutus is
me, Lois, retired academic living in London.
Reading Leofric, Stitch and Chorus is
Helen Scott, based in Suffolk.
Reading Edricus and York is
me, Dan, hailing today from Philly.
Reading Southampton and Pledge number 1 is
Leo, I'm in Bristol.
Reading Turkillus, Egina and Herald is
Rachael Nicole, actor on the East Coast.
Reading Canterbury and Messenger is
Hello, I'm Helen Good. I'm a historian. I'm in Hull.
Reading Countrymen, Alfric and Pledge number 2 is
Aliki Chapple, actor and translator in Lancashire.
And reading Uskataulf and wife is
Hello, my name is Lynn. I am a college writing teacher. I live in the northwestern United States.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions, approximately where they live. They probably live in a slightly different place to where they actually appear. And also, I will leap in if there are any parts that I have accidentally not given out, considering how many Eds there are in this play and people with silly names. I may have missed some. It's entirely possible. Anyway, we're going to dive into what is labelled as Act 1, Scene 1. I don't believe the manuscript actually originally had any divisions, but this seems to have ended up the system that we are adopting. And there's no prologue as far as we know, or at least surviving. Let's not say it didn't have one originally. But anyway, enter King Canute, or Canutus, Archbishop of Canterbury, the Earl of Southampton, Edricus, Leofric, Turkillus, Uskataulf, and Swetho. They sit at a table.
Archbishop, and you other English peers, I hear how Ethelredus, late your king, my tributary, is departed life, and how his son, Prince Edmund, wears the crown without the notice of your free consent or homage unto me, his sovereign. Yourselves, lords spiritual and temporal, besides the due my father's conquest claims, have chosen me, and by a universal sound decree have solemnly throughout this little world proclaimed me heir apparent to the crown when Ethelredus lived. Then let not this young upstart, Prince of Prates,
and somewhere around here he riseth,
curb your proceedings with untutored words, but finish boldly what you have begun. Resist his private coronation, and put not up this vile dishonor done unto you, chief commanders of the realm, as though you were not worth the sending for.
Indeed, his rashness is unportable, and merely nothing but a proud contempt against us of the clergy and the rest that have, for public profit of the realm, for peace, for quiet and utility, elected Prince Canutus for our king, whose valour we have proved unto our cost, whose love unto the church we need not doubt, whose care for all we may rely upon, and whose true bounty is so notable that even his foes admire and honour him. When th'other, what he is, I need not tell, 'tis too well known. I would I could say well, But this I say and swear, were I myself
Similarly, probably displaced stage direction of He Riseth.
professed a soldier or a man-at-arms, as I am one deprived from the world and from my cradle called to serve the Lord, I would with lance approve his title naught and plead your coronation with my sword.
Ah, stout-hearted bishop, spoken like a man. Would all the English lords were of thy mind.
Am I not ready to defend your right with force of arms, as doth become a knight?
I ne'er was slack or hindmost of the rest, but ever first and foremost with the best.
Had I not been a help unto your father, when as he first arrived in Albion, you ne'er had stood in question for the crown, nor had your father's wars so prospered. 'Tis I that first did counsel Ethelred to pay you tribute and to buy your league, whereby we emptied all the treasury, and had not gold failed, you had ne'er been king. I had a navy once, the time was when 'twas in Ethelred's days, your father living, with which I should have met you on the sea within the straits of England, and it was had then no little advantage on your ships. Yet I, as favoring your party most, gave way and let your land without resistance, and for that fact rest, foully scandalized. Was it not I that gave intelligence of all the counsels of King Ethelred unto your father? Did I not, I pray, feign sickness, weakness, disadvantages, when as the king sent me to fight with him? Was I not causer of your good success in all your actions since your father's death, as namely in that battle lately fought between yourself and Edmund Ironside, where I fled from him and did succor you? And since the only ladder upon which your father climbed to get you to hold this gotten kingdom was my diligence, I hope you will not let the least motion of an ill thought creep in to hinder me, nor do I think you use this speech by me.
Why, what need all this repetition? Good faith, I meant no harm in saying so. Why should I doubt you? Wherefore should I fear? You never yet deceived me. I cannot speak, but some or other straight misconsters me. Why, by my troth, my lord, I meant not you, but those that cleave to Edmund Ironside and hang in part against my government. Call me, therefore, and be not discontent.
In token, then, you mean as you have said, honour my castle with the name of court, and take a subject's welcome from his heart, to signify you love my town and me.
And Uskataulf whispereth now in Canutus' ear.
Why, that's a trifle, mighty sovereign. Yield unto him in this petition. It will confirm the people's hearts to you, and make him live and die to honour you.
I willingly descend to your request, and will this night be with you at your place.
I'll go before to countenance your grace.
Exit Southampton, enter a company of countrymen making a noise. Let's hear some noise. Enough noise.
Where is the king, that he may right our wrong?
The king is here. Who is it calls the king? I am your king. Speak, gentle countryman, what lawless hand hath done you injury?
Renowned Canutus, we are all Danes by birth, the remnant of thy needy followers, who, when thy father lived here secure, and dwelt among the fattest of this land. We then did yoke the Saxons, and compelled their stubborn necks to ear the fallow fields. We then did force them honour us as lords, and be our slaves, our drudges, and our dogs. But now, I know not what the cause should be, unless the instigation of their prince, young Ironside, or else their stubborn nature. They all rebel, and with conjoined force assault us manly, and from every part of this perturbed island banish us. We are not able to resist their powers, but fall like leaves before the northern wind. Huge heaps of us lie dead in every place, and unless you help, will all be slain.
Help, help, Canutus, help and succour us.
Good countrymen, Canutus will not see you wronged, for yet the spirit of my father's fane reigns in these veins, which I will shed even drop by drop ere I will see you harmed. Go in, good friends, and pacify yourselves. Be confident in me, and if I live, I plant you in your former quiet states. Swetho, look to them. They shall be your care.
And exit Swetho with the poor Danes.
Now, lords, let not this sudden rumour daunt your manly hearts. Though Edmund be so strong, we are as strong, and stronger far than he. Then tell me, shall we now assail him? Say, Uskataulf, what is to be done?
You may, my lord. Yet be remembered now, against what nation you are bound to war. A generation like the chosen Jews, stubborn, unwieldy, fierce, and wild to tame, scorning to be compelled against their wills, abhorring servitude as having felt the overlording burden of the same.
Indeed, my countrymen are factious and must be reined with a mocking stall. Curb them, my lord, and bridle but their wills, and you shall find them mild and tractable. If that you use them as your father did, they dare not, nay, they will not look awry, but serve you as your slaves by conquest too. But if you lay the team upon their necks, and let them have but any scope to run, why, then be sure they'll gad as they were galled, and neither know themselves nor yet your grace, for lenity doth cause them to rebel, because they are ignorant of living well.
List how this flattering mate soothes up the king and doth abuse his gracious sufferance. Base, vile, insinuating sycophant, degenerate bastard, falsely bred, foul mother-killing viper, traitor, slave, the scum of vices, all the ill that may be. Who would excite the king to tyranny against his countrymen but only he? I am a Dane, renowned sovereign. You have experience of my loyalty, and that my counsel is not mercenary. If I were wise enough to give advice, you should not prove a tyrant, but a king. A tyrant is abhorred of God and man, whenas a king loved and honored. Comptest thou, Edricus, the Saxons' fools are rather hardy, wise, and valorous? Their names discover what their natures are, more hard than stones, and yet not stones. Indeed, in fight, more than stones, and more than stones detesting flight. In peace, soft as wax, wise, providence. Witness the many combats they have fought. Denmark, our countries lost by them, and theirs with many other witness worth. How often they have driven us to our shifts, and made us take the sea in our defense, when we in number have been 3-1. Oh, you deceive yourself, and eke the king in wishing him so much against himself. Recall the former perils we have passed, whose dear-bought times are freshly yet in mind. The tyranny of your father Stanus used in tithing people, killing 9 of 10. What did ensure? Why, loss of many holds, bloodshed and war, rebellion, sword, and fire. For they are Englishmen, easy to rule with lenity, so they be used like men. Patient of right, impatient of wrong, brooking no tyranny of any sort, but hating and revenging it with death. Therefore I counsel you, if it might stand, to win their hearts not by severity, but by your favor, love, and lenity.
Good Uskataulf, I allow your speech and praise your counsel by my own consent. I will endeavor to suppress my rage and quench the burning choler of my heart, which sometimes so inflames my inward parts as I fall out with my best loved friends. I will, therefore, so moderate myself as Englishmen shall think me English born. I will be mild and gentle to my foes, if gentleness can win their stubborn hearts. But let us hence, my lords. By this the Earl expects us at Southampton. There we'll rest, till we consult if peace or war be best.
And exit omnes. Leofric pulls Turkillus by the sleeve as he is going and stays him.
Word, my lord.
So you use no blows?
I think you noble, virtuous, secret, wise. Else would I not have opened my intent, which doth so much concern our private good, to you in private. So it is, my lord, I've oft noted your discontented gait, which measured by my own do well declare the mind that rules your body is not pleased. And since so sweet a symphony appears betwixt our body's discontent, I judge our mind's disturbance to be the only one caused from the sad neglect of these strange days. But what a grief it is to noble bloods to see each base-born groom promoted up, each dunghill brat arreared to dignity, each flatterer esteemed virtuous, when the true, noble, virtuous gentlemen are scorned, disgraced, and held in obloquy. Base Edricus, a traitor to his king, is held in honour. We two trusty subjects are feared, suspected, and have liberty only to live, yet not in liberty. For what is it but imprisonment or worse, when as our children, blood of our own blood, are kept close prisoners, pledges for our faiths? King Edmund, who indeed is our true king, for good regard of merit and desert, for honour, fame, and true nobility, is rightly termed mirror of majesty. Canutus is a prudent, noble prince, and loves to hear him called so. Too much. But I will tell you this, as long as we take part against our sovereign Ironside, we are but traitors. Therefore,
Stay, noble Chester, for I spy your drift. To heap as many titles on your head as you have poured on mine were but your due. Yet to cut off such troiting thieves of time, I say amen to your intention, which is to leave Canutus and his court and fly to Edmund, our true lawful king. But lest you should suspect my secrecy by being won so soon to your device, I here assure you that this very plot hath long been hammering in my troubled brain. And had you not prevented my intent, I should ere long have moved you herein. But what shall then become of our two boys who are our pledges? They shall surely die.
just 'tis no matter. They die, they die. They cannot suffer in a better time, nor for a better cause, their country's good. We gave them life. For us, they shed their blood.
He that sent them can send us more again. Then let us hence. Delay of time is vain.
And they exit. My word, Leofric's hardcore, isn't he? Yeah, sons. Yeah, you know, it's a good time to be sacrificing one's children. It's sometimes you should avoid it, but this is a good occasion. So yes, we have a contentious succession. We have Canute trying to hold on to a power base. It feels oddly familiar this week. It's earlier in the week we were reading The Troubles of Elizabeth, and this is very different in tone, but in a sense it's the same problem. You've got one established ruler and someone else who's much more actively, in this case, saying, no, actually I am king. And we've got various people rebelling or in the countryside, and also people in the court sort of fracturing off from what's been decided. We've got questions of what do you do to hold on to your kingdom? Do you go around killing everyone who doesn't agree with you, or do you try and carrot or stick? That's Canute's little problem here. Thoughts of the room? How are we finding this court? Helen, then Alan.
Yes, it's a bit difficult because I'm not totally certain who all these people are, or more importantly, why. But and it would be so much easier if we could actually see actors and say, oh yeah, the one with the long nose is not a happy bunny. But I think that those he riseths should come at the beginning of the speech.
Oh yes, I'm sure. I mean, it may be on actor's discretion here, but Dan may have an opinion on this. But definitely, I just left them in place approximately where they appeared.
Yes, I mean, I think they're presumably marginal and relate to the entire speech. I would have thought.
They're actually in the margin, as Rob said, but they're actually bracketed to say specifically when they should appear, when they should rise. This is not to say the actor must rise there, but the scribe indicated that this is where he thinks it should be.
It may be a line or so out. It may be more after where we would put, say, a full stop or something. That it may not be exactly right, but it does seem to be perhaps a mid speech thing. I think it's one to play around with, and I don't think a producer has to be too dedicated.
Yeah, can I ask anyone who knows, following on from what I said before, are we happy that these people are mixed? Some are Danes, some are Saxons.
Yeah, it seems to be. Yeah,
Leofric is obviously a Saxon from the name.
Yes, it does seem to be that the court is currently moderately
but
mixed together.
Uskataulf, I would have thought, was a Dane. I don't know.
I believe he is. Yes, so the it's not a straight split. It is more complex, and it's presenting us with a complex political situation. And we, as with an audience, are sort of trying to figure out what's going on in this court and how it all functions. Alan, then Lois, then Lynn.
I must admit, I felt at the point when Southampton exited, just before the entrance of the Countrymen, that it would be sensible if the English or the Saxon people were physically moved aside, because the next sequence after the poor Danes have been dealt with does seem to be the Danish gang working out, right, how are we going to split up the spoils, and the English or the Saxons have nothing to contribute until we get to that point at which you get the vignette of Leofric and Turkillus. Again, I'm not sure whether that's maybe making it too simple. Clarity is useful, but maybe. Lois, then.
Yeah. A couple of things. One is, I just wondered why there are only two directions for someone to stand up. Is it because they assume that after that it will be taken as read that everybody stands up when he's about to make a speech, or are those two people somehow different? Are they standing up because they're more emotional? Or I just wondered. There's probably no answer to that. The other thing is that I would imagine that costume would help an awful lot here. I mean, if there were something to distinguish the Danes from the Saxons. Some of them do say which nationality they are when they start speaking, but they don't all.
Yeah, leftover costumes from the Last Kingdom or something would be very helpful for this one. Lynn.
Yeah, it is an interesting politically complicated court, because because certain characters are Danes doesn't mean that they're necessarily on the wrong side, and so that would kind of imply that just because certain characters are Saxon or native English doesn't mean that they're necessarily good guys. I mean, because like Uskataulf is obviously supposed to be good because he's praising the English. He's talking about, they're just these incredible badasses on the battlefield. I mean, they beat us to our boats when we were 3-1, and they love justice, and so it like obviously he's supposed to be a good character because he's talking about how awesome the English are, but he's clearly a Dane. So, and even the English characters that kind of linger at the end say, Canute really is he's a good person. He's a noble king. And I don't think that's ironic. So just because you're a Dane doesn't mean you're a bad guy, and just because you're English doesn't mean you're a good guy. So yeah, it's very interesting.
And there's also a question of whether or where asides might be living in some of this, because I was thinking that Uskataulf's long speech, the opening of that might be an aside, before addressing the rest of the court. List how this flattering mate soothes up the king.
Like no, it's very strong. Like, he's calling this guy every rotten name in the book, and if he'd done that in Canute's hearing that, I would think that would kind of undermine his credibility. I really like that read on that.
That he then steps out to the, I'm a Dane renowned sovereign, feels like, hi, I'm back in the room. We've had long asides in the middle of scenes like that elsewhere, so it's not impossible. Any other initial thoughts? We're just getting our groove on with this play, so other thoughts, Rachael?
Dan said in the chat that the first he riseth is something the bookkeeper put in, and then the other things in the manuscript, but it's kind of like to what Lois said, that you could play with that, because if everybody rises for the king except Edricus, who seems to be, filing a complaint with this king, then that changes how I think intense his complaint is. It could be characterization, or somebody could play with that, or play with who chooses to stand and who chooses to sit, or when they choose to rise and do whatever.
Yeah, they're the kind of stage direction where you're sort of going, right, let's play around with this, but let's also drop it if we don't. It's the kind of stage direction one can happily ignore. And there's a nice structural thing about what Edricus does when he does his speech, which, it feels like it doesn't need a standing upness. I just love the way the Canutus responds to that. She just, why, what need all this repetition? Which is basically to just go, hi, thanks for the info dump, we're moving on. I almost want Edricus to say, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but... Okay, we're going to move on to do a couple of scenes back to back, primarily because one of them is just a speech. Act 1, Scene 2, as we have it. Enter Edricus Solus.
What shall I think of him that means to beg and can thus finally live upon his wit? I was as mean as any basely born. Say not, it's so, it will discredit thee. No man hears me. I but think not so, for it will make thy peacock's plumes fall down, if one such abject thought possess thy mind. 'Tis strange to see how I am favored, possess my dukedom and Canutus's grace, and am the chief of all his counsellors, when as my betters are exiled the court, being discountenanced and out of grace. They cannot dissemble as I can, cloak, cousin, cog and flatter with the king, crouch and seem courteous, promise and protest, say much do not, in all things use deceit, tell troth to no man, carry tales abroad, whisper close secrets in the giddy air, be a newsmonger, feed the king with sooths, please all men's humors with humility, which he must do, is that is a courtier, and minds to keep in favor with the king. He that had heard my story from beyond, how many treasons I have practiced, how many vile things I have brought to pass, and what great wonders have been compassed by this deep-reaching pate, would think it was. I had been bound apprentice to deceit, and from my birthday studied villainy. I understand Prince Edmund's up in arms, lay hold upon occasion's sluggy lock, and whilst Canutus here securely sleeps, he wins with ease, with what we with pain have got. Mass if he do and fortune favor him, I will so work as I'll be in his grace and keep my living and myself unhurt. But if Canutus chance to gain again, then I am his, for I can close withal. And yet indeed to say the very truth, rather of both I love Canutus best, for Edmund's father first did raise me up, and from a ploughman's son promoted me to be a duke for all my villainy. And so as often as I look on him, I must remember what he did for me, and whence I did descend and what I am, which thoughts abase my state most abjectly. Therefore, I hate him, and desire his death, and will procure his end in what I can. But for Canutus, he doth honor me, because he knows not whence I did descend. Therefore, of the two, I love Canutus best. Yet I can play an ambidextrous part and swear I love, yet hate him with my heart.
Exit, Edricus. Interesting. Act 1, Scene 3. Enter Edmund and Alfric, the general under the king.
Yet are ye sure, my lord, that all is fit? Are all my soldiers furnished for this war? What, have they meat and drink to their content? Do not the captains pinch them of their pay?
Assure your majesty my care is such as I do daily oversee them all, and cause the meanest soldier to be served and have his fill of meat and drink that's good, without controlment, check, or menaces. For the only means to mar a soldier's fight, pinch him of meat and pay, and pinch his might.
Then do ye well, for I am of this mind, that he that for private base commodity will starve his soldiers or keep back their pay, he that to deck himself in gorgeous tire will see his men go naked, die for cold, is a plain cutthroat to the commonwealth. A worthy captain, seeing a tall soldier march barefoot, halting, plucked off his own shoes and gave them to the soldier, saying, "Fellow, when I want shoes, then give me these again." But captains nowadays pluck off their soldiers' shoes, nay, sell their lives to make them rich and gallant to the eye.
Enter Turkillus and Leofric.
But soft, what are yon two strangers?
They kneel.
We are rebellious traitors to your grace, born Englishmen, but strangers to ourselves, who in remorse of conscience, knowing well we have in taking part with Danish Canutus, deserved death, come of our own free wills, either to suffer for our heinous acts, or else embrace our pardons, which we crave, even as hereafter we shall merit it.
Rise up, Turkillus. Leofric, arise. Give me your hands, and with your hands your hearts. I more esteem the life of one true subject than the destruction of 1,000 foes. One sheep that was lost I more rejoiced to find than 20 other which I never missed. A friend of whose return I stood in doubt is more welcome to me than 40 other. Oh, that when strangers cannot conquer us, we should conspire with them against ourselves. England, if ever war thy face doth spoil, thank not thy outward foe, but inward friend, for thou shalt never perish till that day when thy right hand shall make thy heart away. Go in, brave lords, your sight doth me more joy than Agamemnon when he conquered Troy.
And they exit. Oh, lots of interesting things popping up here. I think there's some interesting stuff to do with soldiers going on there, but I'm also really interested in what's going on with Edricus here. The logic of who he's going to follow is really interestingly twisted. I'm fascinated by that. Lynn and then Alan.
If we didn't think Edricus was not a very nice person before, that whole rationale of I basically owe everything I am to Edmund, and he knows that I'm base born and he elevated me. I'm indebted to him, so I resent him. Ingratitude was, as I understand it, a really widely condemned vice. That's so. So we are really painting him as someone who is not a good person, because not only is he ambitious and kind of deceitful and dishonest, he's ungrateful, which is very bad. That's very bad.
And earlier was the one going rebels, chop them up, take them out. Alan.
Yeah, I was just wondering, there was in that speech, it was for all my villainy. And I'm just wondering whether that's villainy in the sense of being born a villain, in other words, of low caste, rather than for any implication of evil, which is what the word now has. The
Yes,
context of.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's. I mean, that's not to say he's going to turn out to be a nice chap, but,
No, but
absolutely, it's a
I think
status thing.
It is more his birth status, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting as where it's placed, as well as this little marker as well before we go and meet Edmund, of whom we have heard a certain amount about, who's in the throes of getting his soldiers together. All sorts of stuff going on there as well. I'll go to Aliki, then Helen.
So it's interesting because you've got a court scene and then that speech, and then instead of a court scene, an army scene. And on the one hand, the king surrounded by a bunch of people telling him he's wonderful and what he should do. And on the other hand, a king or an aspiring king whose only concern is that his people be okay, or that his army be well fed and treated properly. Very kind of strong contrast being set up there.
Helen.
Yes, there is nothing like putting someone seriously in your debt to lose their friendship. You know, I mean, friendship doesn't often survive being in a massive debt to somebody else for something. You've got to have some reciprocity for self-respect to continue to exist.
Aliki.
Actually, sorry, one more thing. I was thinking about Turkillus and what's his face, the other one. Yeah, arriving, and that's a nonsense line they're spinning him. Oh, we're so ready to be killed for having served the other guy. They know perfectly well he's desperate for their men.
Yeah, and yeah, that thing of how do you talk to talk up yourself to a king? Yeah, I really like that. Briony, then Lois.
Yeah, I just like that it was sort of, here's some people, and then you got a few bits and bobs about who's who, but then it was like, this is the bad guy and this is the good guy. I like it when they make it nice and easy to follow like that.
Yeah, but in a sense, Canute isn't coming across as a bad guy. He's just got some dodgy folk around him.
No, I meant
the Edricus.
Yeah, blatantly bad guy.
Yeah.
Like I said, the first one was kind of ambiguous. There's some details that were hinting that we had a bad guy, but then it was like, this is definitely a bad guy. This is definitely a good guy. And I guess we'll find out at some point where Canutus fits in that scale also.
Lois.
Yeah, it's complicated slightly by the fact that Edmund is welcoming a couple of people whose motives are decidedly fishy and who don't mention the fact that they've left their sons behind, probably to be killed. They represent themselves as making a huge sacrifice, but they're basically sacrificing someone else, so that Edmund may be the good guy, but he's getting some pretty dodgy followers.
Helen, then Rachael, I think.
I think it's quite interesting that Edmund says, yon two strangers, but without being told, he knows their names. I think that might very well pass in the playing of it, but it's very obvious in the reading of it.
I mean, presumably in the previous regime under the previous king, there's been a certain amount of mixing where people have actually met each other.
Yeah.
I don't know what Ethelred's court was like. But,
I mean, maybe they take their helmets off and he says, "Oh, you're not strangers. I know who you are."
Rachael.
Yeah. No, I was going to say for the Edricus part that you have kind of his public face, which is kind of ambiguous in that first scene, and then we get some of his private face, and then with Turkillus and Leofric, knowing that this other guy needs troops, that it's kind of a, let's see if we can get, go to this guy and maybe trying to get a promotion through somebody who needs them. And then maybe what Helen was saying, that Maybe they don't have their banners or something, and they've come without, their arms. I'm not sure about those things, and just come in, the mail or something like that, the chain mail, whatever they were using at this time, his armor.
Yeah, it's interesting also just the language that Edmund's using here. I mean, there's a slight shift in public voice and the slightly private-ish voice that Edmund's using with Alfric. And, because it's all very, very over the top, some of that. One sheep that was lost, I'm more rejoiced to find than 20 others. It's really interesting the how effusive he is for their after their abasement as well in front of him, because they're kneeling, etc. Alan.
Well, that sheep one is a straight quote out of the Bible, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah. It's
So it kind of casts Edmund as Jesus.
Well,
so let's see how that goes. We're still early in the play. I'm sure we'll find more data as we go. Let's dive into the next scene, labelled later as Act 2, Scene 1. Drum and trumpet sound. For a banquet, enter a banquet. Then enter Canutus, Southampton, Archbishop, Uskataulf, and Swetho, and Edricus.
My lord, you are too bountiful. Half this expense would well have satisfied the homely stomachs of our soldiers, and entertained ourself right royally. Where is your daughter?
She shall give attendance to wait upon your grace at dinner time.
Nay, good my lord, unless you give her leave to sit at board and find me table talk, I shall not think myself a welcome guest.
May I crave pardon of your majesty? My daughter, being young in years and manners, is far unfit to keep a queen's estate.
If faith, my lord, you are too scrupulous, too unadvised, too fearful, without cause, to stand upon such nice excuses. I love to see a table furnished, and sure I will not sit till she comes in.
Egina, come away, sweet girl. The king will have thee dine with him today. Be not too coy, nor yet too flexible. If chance he proffer any courtesy, behave yourself in honourable sort, and answer him with modesty and mirth. A means may be to make thee queen.
What, is your daughter come? Welcome, fair lady. Your presence is as welcome as the day after a long and weary watchful night. Sit down, fair lady. Sit down, noble lord. Fill me a cup of wine. Here's to the health of Ironside and all his followers. Who will pledge me?
Pardon your handmaid, Egina will.
Wilt pledge me to the health of Ironside? What reason moves you so to fancy him?
The good regard I bear your majesty, for should he die before these wars were done, and you have finished strife through victory, some other Cadmus bird worse than himself might hap to broach some new commotion, and trouble all the state with mutinies, where if he lives till you have conquered him, none after him dares renovate the wars.
Sweetly and wisely answered, noble queen, for by that name, if heaven and thou consent, by sunset all the camp shall wish thee health. My lord, what say you to this motion?
As it shall please your royal majesty, dispose of me and whatsoe'er is mine.
Madam, pleaseth it you to be a queen?
What, my dread sovereign, and my father wills, I dare not, nay, I will not contradict.
Then for a manual seal, receive this kiss, the chief dumb utterer of the heart's intent. And noble father, now I'll call you so, if this rash seeming match do like you well, deliver me possession presently of this fair lady, your beloved child, and we will straight to church and celebrate the duties which belong to marriages. Bishop of Canterbury, will you marry us without the Silbert asking, will you not?
I am prepared, if every part be pleased.
Faith, I am pleased.
But what say you?
I say a woman's silence is consent.
Here's a match extempore, small ado about a weighty matter. Some, perhaps, would have consumed millions to effect what I, by some spent breath, have compassed. Lords, let us in, for I intend to be espoused tonight with all solemnity. After our marriage, we do mean to go to meet in open field, our open foe.
And they exit. Okay, I think it would be fair to say for a modern audience that this Canutus has lost the room. So yeah. Anyone seen Audition? Never mind. Hopefully, Egina has some cheese wire handy. Thoughts in the room about this one, Aliki?
Okay, let's take it away from the feminist take on a woman's silence and consent. I'm interested in why her father doesn't want her serving the king. And I would suspect that it's not about safeguarding her so much as it is not wanting the alliance, perhaps. Not wanting to be bound to the king by his daughter's marriage. Well, I'm curious about that little thing.
Lois?
Well, it might be the opposite. He might be tantalizing him, holding off so as to make him more curious to see this girl.
Yep, that works too.
It's a question of what's an aside or not, because when Egina enters, the king will have thee dine with him today. Be not too coy nor yet too flexible. If, that is an open speech, if that's, again, an aside to her, then that is a very different complexion on the scene. Helen, then Alan.
Yeah, I mean, he was never proposing that they shouldn't meet. Southampton wasn't. But what he was saying with the true modesty of a subject is, my daughter will wait on you rather than sit beside you. And this is a sort of disabling speech. No, we are not worthy. She is not worthy. It's that sort of speech. It was never his intention that she shouldn't be seen by him. And obviously he's got his hopes up.
Alan, then Lynn.
Or is it Southampton trying to keep his options open so he can join the winning side?
I'd say it may be, but it's definitely feeling like that Southampton is quite keen, Canute is quite keen. Egina, discuss. Lynn.
Yeah, Egina, that's you could go any way with that. But I think one of the things that Southampton is trying to achieve here is that if Canutus is interested in his daughter, he wants to make sure that Canutus legitimizes her position. When he says, oh, sitting next to the king, that's a queen's place. We're not good enough. I mean, I think in a way that's saying, if you want to woo my daughter, I might be down with that, but she's not going to become your concubine. And when he says to her, be not too coy nor too flexible, don't give in too easily, hold out for the, put a ring on it. I think that's what could be going on here too.
And you've also got this sort of test element here when Canutus is saying, who will, here's to the health of Ironside. Who will pledge me? And, how do you respond when the king says, pledge to my sworn enemy who I am literally about to leave and try and kill? This is a fascinatingly complex social situation of manoeuvrings by all the people involved. Rachael, I think, were you waving earlier?
I was just going to say that, I don't know, the asides in this one are kind of interesting because you have it more explicitly with Turkillus and Leofric in that first scene, and then you get this little bit here. like how Marston kind of does does his little character studies. It's like he kind of puts those asides to the forefront to create this feeling of vicious gossip. And here you have something nefarious, like the overthrow of a king or a wannabe king, one of the competitor kings that they all seem to be pulling and saying to the side. I mean, it's like this, at least the second or third time that somebody's had an aside where they're talking about how much they don't like Canutus.
Lois.
Yeah, I think Southampton definitely wants his daughter to be queen. I mean, at the end of his speech, which I think must be an aside to her, he finishes up with "a means may be to make thee queen." He also tells her to answer with modesty and mirth, and I take it she passes the test brilliantly by being the only one to pledge Ironside and then coming up with this argument. And I think that Cadmus bird bit in the middle of her speech, some other Cadmus bird worse than himself, I wonder if that's Cadmus brood. And they're talking about, I think it was the stones that were thrown that brought up all these iron men that fought each other, and the sort of symbol for civil war anyway. And that must, so she's actually being very clever in this speech. She might even turn it into a bit of a joke, and since she's being asked to answer with mirth as well.
Okay, we need to move on. We will hold on to some of these thoughts because I'm sure there'll be more complications on some of this stuff later on, or maybe there won't. Who knows? Act 2, Scene 2. Enter Edrick, a poor man, his wife, and Stitch.
Nay, Stitch, an you once see my son, you'll swear he is a bouncer, all in silks and gold, vengeable rich.
How say you that?
I tell you, you may bless the day that ever you apt into his service. He is a man every hair's breadth, a most vile, brave man in faith.
Then we shall be well met. I love bravery and cleanliness out of all cry, and indeed of all things. Cannot brook an ill-favoured face. Hang him that wants a good face.
You are of my mind. We may say a pox of all good faces, and never hurt our own.
We may indeed, God be praised. But what house is this? How far are we off from Southampton?
Why, we are in the town. The King Canutus lies here now, and my son is here, and all our neighbours will be here today at the bridal for alms.
Enter Edricus.
Whoso desires to mount a lofty pitch must bear himself against the stubborn wind and shun base common popularity.
Who's this?
Oh, 'tis my son. Make ye handsome. Tie your garters for shame. Wipe your shoes. Mend your shirt band.
Oh, let me go to him first. God save his son.
A pox upon him, 'tis the knave my father. Good fellow, hast thou any suit to us? Deliver up thy supplication.
Oh, sir, ye know me well enough. I'm good man Edrick, your father.
My father? Grouthead, sir knave, I say you lie. You horse and cuckold, you base vagabond, you slave, you mongrel, peasant, dolt and fool. Canst thou not know a duke from common man?
By my troth, I learned him all these names to call his father when he was a child, and see if he can forget them yet. Oh, he is a wise man, for in faith my husband is none of his father, for indeed a soldier begot him of me, as I went once to a fair. But son, know ye me?
The old hag, witch, queen, slut, drab, whore, and thief, how should I know thee, black Egyptian?
This is his old tricks, husband. Come, son, I am sure you know me.
Aye, if not too well. Wherefore comes yon sheep-biter? You, sir, knave, you are my brother, are ye not, I pray?
No, sir, and it like ye.
It likes me very well. What is your name? Wherefore came ye hither?
His name is Stitch, my son. We came with him to help him to your son.
You answer for him, gossip. Wants he tongue?
No, sir. I have tongue enough, if that be good.
And he shows his tongue.
What can ye do?
Anything. Dress an horse, scour a chamber pot, go to plough, thrash, dig, And indeed, why not?
Can't make clean shoes?
Why? It's part of my occupation. With my art. I'm a cobbler for need. A piece of shoe as well as the best. Wipe a shoe? Look you here else. Give me a foot.
Right, stay, not so hasty. We they but sly devices mean to mount and creep into opinion by deceit. Must not of all things have a scholar know our practices. We must suppress good wits and keep them under. We must favor fools and with promotions win their shallow pates. A ready wit would quickly wind us out and pry into our secret treacheries and wade as deep in policy as we. But such loose-brained, windy-headed slaves, such blockheads, dolts, fools, dunces, idiots, such logger-headed rogues are best for us, for we may work their wills to what we will and win their hearts with gold to anything. Come hither, Stitch, this villain and queen that brought thee hither claim an interest in my nobility, when as God knows my noble father died long since in wars, being Duke of Mercia, then as I am now. Therefore, but first to cut off long delays, I entertain thee for my chamberlain. And as thou shalt prove secret, trusty, true, I will reward thee with some higher place. But first, to try thee, fetch the constable. Yet, stay a while, they would suspect the truth. I'll have thee, when thou seest me gone away, beat these two beggars hence, and teach them how they shall hereafter choose a meaner son. Hey, wilt thou be trusty? Wilt thou cudgel them?
Never take care for that. I'll beat them. They were never better beaten since they were born.
Aye, do so. Stitch, I prithee, beat them well. Hark ye, and see them whipped out of the town. And if they speak or prattle, curse or rave, for every word give them 10 blows. Sweet slave.
Oh, son, stay.
Son, with a pestilence. You're much like to be his father and you his mother. You brought me hither.
I?
And I must beat you hence. And if you desire to know why, you must hereafter learn to find a meaner man. Be a son than my lord is.
He beats them about the stage.
He is my son. Oh, good Stitch, hold thy hand.
They exit. What an interesting little psychodrama this is. Fascinating. Edricus comes home and it's basically these are not his parents. And goes to his brother. Hi, this is the cover story. These people are claiming an interest in my nobility. As we all know, my noble father died long since in wars. Repeat after me. Just if we get rid of our parents, you can come and work for me, and that'll be fine. So he does actually, he obviously is going to take his brother on board. That's cool. But parents, no. Get rid of the evidence. Cast them out into outer darkness. Helen.
Are we sure it's his brother?
It seemed to be what they were suggesting.
Who?
Stitch. Wasn't that the relationship, or was he just some local friend? Did I misunderstand that?
I think he is actually son of the two of Edrick and his wife, but Edric's wife claims that Edricus was not may have been born within the marriage, but was not a natural son.
Yes, I mean, they say...
So half-brother, technically.
So when they're brothers, it's there's no meaningful distinction.
Well, he says he's not. Stitch says he's not his brother, and the wife says his name is Stitch. We came with him to help him to your service. They don't, I think, say anything about relationship.
Ah, right. Okay.
No, you see, Edricus, I think, says, "You are my brother, are you not, I pray?" But I think he is being deeply sarcastic there, because having rejected them as his mother and father, he's saying in the third one, "You, I take it, are pretending to be my brother," is what he's saying.
Yeah.
I think Stitch is a bit random at this point.
Aliki.
I think Rob's right, because the wife... Oh, no. Hang on. The wife says, I learned him all these names to call his father when he was a child, and see if he can forget him yet. He is a wise man, for in faith my husband is none of his father. I think she's talking about Edricus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Who's just called his father names. So
Yeah.
I take it back. Yeah, I think he is just a random guy they picked up somewhere.
Yeah, and the bit about a wise man, it's because of that proverb. It's a wise man knows his own father. And the point is, he's a wise man and knows that this isn't his father.
But so he's just suborning Stitch on the principle to beat his family out of town, which again still good plan from Edricus's point of view. Nice chap. So who's next? Rachael.
I think the part towards when the section where it starts with "This is his old Trick's husband, come son, I'm sure you know me," and then it goes down into "You are my brother, are ye not, I pray? No, sir, and it like ye." He says I think he's how you guys were saying that he's setting up the story. The wife then says his name is Stitch, and then says Stitch is her son, like this is the personas that they're going to put on, and that they're going to play like they're Edricus's servants instead, like they've come like with a recommendation as servants. It's like he's mock interviewing his family to be his servants.
Well, I think it's just Stitch. He's saying to Stitch, "You can come and be my servant if you beat my parents out of town." That's the deal. Whether he follows through on that deal, we shall find out. It might be that we never see him again. But who knows? Dan.
It just strikes me though that if he's not at all related, then it just makes it for a less powerful, I think, relationship with these characters here. I think they might be that he's maybe possibly half related, or that just one of them is his parents, or one of them maybe just some half blood connection with that from not necessarily a different marriage, but that his mother had other children from other people.
Lois.
Well, he is his mother's son. I mean, she says that. It's just that he is a bastard, just to, add to the good qualities he's got.
Right. So I think he might be a half brother.
Yes, the question of Stitch, is the question of resolving who is Stitch. Maybe we'll get more evidence later. I think that we can shelf that for the moment.
Stitch is a clown and doesn't need any other explanation.
That is also a very good way of putting it. Yes, probably not even in the same century, let alone family. Anyway, let's move into Act 2, Scene 3. We're back with Canute. Enter Canutus, Archbishop Edricus, Uskataulf, and Swetho, who has yet not said a damn thing.
Then are they gone? 'Tis certain they are fled. Turkillus and Leofric, who would have thought it? Did I not use them well, give them good words, rewarded their endeavors, and besides graced them as much as any person here?
You use them but too well, and let me say, your lenity did cause them run away.
Have we not pledges of their loyalty?
Ye have, my lord.
Their eldest sons, I think.
True, but they know you are too merciful.
They are deceived, for since they have disturbed the settled solace of our marriage day, and daunted our determined merriments with causeless flight, to plague their father's fact, I'll lay the treason on their children's back, and make their guiltless shoulders bear the burthen. Fetch me the pledges, Swetho, and with them some bloody varlet from the Danish host, and let him bring an axe, a block, and knife along with him. But do it quickly, Swetho, and come again as fast.
What doth your grace intend to do with them?
I'll cut their hands and noses off.
Your judgment doth not far enough extend unto the height of runaway's desert. This death is too light a punishment for traitors, and loss of hands and nose is less than death.
If an honest man had said so, I would have liked it never the worse.
This punishment is worse than loss of life, for it is a stinging corsive to their souls as often as they do behold themselves lopped and bereft of those two ornaments which necessary use doth daily crave. Again, it giveth others daily cause to think how traitors should be handled, whereas the memory of present death is quickly buried in oblivion, doing no good but whilst it is in doing. A traitor may be likened to a tree, which being shred and topped when it is green, doth for one twig which from the same was cut yield 20 arms, yea, 20 arms for one. But being hacked and mangled with an axe, the root dies and piecemeal rots away. Even so with traitors. Cut me off their heads, still more out of the self-same stock will sprout. But plague them with the loss of needful members, as eyes, nose, hands, ears, feet, or any such, oh, these are cutting cards unto their souls, earmarked to know a traitorous villain by, even as a brand is to descry a thief. These desperate persons, for example's sake, these ruffians, these all-daring, lusty bloods, these court appendixes, these madcap lads, these nothing-fearing Hotspurs, that attend our royal court. Tell them of hanging cheer, they'll say it is a trick or two above ground. Tell them of quartering or the heading axe, they'll swear beheading is a gallant death, and he's a dastard that doth fear to die. But say to them, you shall be branded, or your hands cut off, or your nostrils slit. Then shallow fear makes their quivering tongues to speak abruptly. Rather, let us die than we should suffer this vile ignominy. A valiant heart esteemeth light of death, but honorable minds are jealous of honorable names. Then to be marked, which robs them of their honors, likewise robs their hearts of joy. And like to irksome owls, they will be bashful to be seen abroad.
Alas, poor souls, it was against their wills that their hard-hearted fathers broke the league.
Alas, poor souls, it is against their wills that they must lose their noses and their hands.
Enter Swetho with the 2 pledges and Stitch with an axe.
Come on, gentlemen, 'cause I have found your fathers trusty as they promised it unto my father and to me. Therefore, I mean to make you worthy men, such as the world shall afterward report did suffer torments for their country's good. Come on, I say, prepare your visages to bear the tokens of eternity. Prepare your noses, bid your hands adieu, because your sires have proved themselves so true.
Rather than this, oh, kill us presently. These being gone, we do abhor our lives, and having these, we loathe to live accursed, accompanied traitors to our native soil. Suffer us first to try our stripling force with any giant of your cyclops size, and let our arms fight once before our deaths, to wreak their malice on their masters' foes. So let us perish like to gentlemen, like to ourselves, and like to Englishmen.
Look how cold water cast on burning coals doth make the fire more fervently to flame. Even so, your tears doth add unto my rage, and makes it hotter when it gins to cool. 'Tis not my pleasure you should suffer death, 'cause I believe 'twould ease your father's griefs. 'Tis not my pleasure you should try your powers, so I should give you honors undeserved, and you perchance might so redeem yourselves. But you shall see our judgments straight performed. Do execution on them presently. I'll teach your fathers, if they do not know, what 'tis to violate a lawful oath. I'll teach them what it is to play with kings, presuming on their mercy. Come, I say, what trifle ye? Delay no more the time, for you must suffer for your father's crime.
What, sir, must you cast off my hands?
Aye, and your noses too. 'Twere pity in faith to mar 2 such faces. Boys, will you change beards with me?
You shall not touch my nose with those base hands. By heaven, I'll sooner cut it off myself.
You'll think a worse pair than these a good pair ere night. How they'll look when their noses be off. Everyone will take them for Frenchmen.
Dispatch, I say. I must not stay so long. The more you delay the time, the worse you speed.
Give me the axe. I'll quickly execute this direful judgment on my guiltless hands.
With all my heart. You save me a labour.
Stay, unadvised villain, hold thy hand, or I will hack thee piecemeal with thy axe. Why, art thou mad? To give thy enemy an instrument to kill thyself and me? Cut off his hands first, then deliver it him.
And he cuts off one hand.
So, cut off the other.
He cuts off the other hand.
Now, sir, fight your fill.
Let these my stumps crave vengeance at thy hands, thou judge of judges and thou king of kings.
Cut off his nose, then let him pray again. Perchance his praying mitigates his pain.
He cuts off his nose.
Pour thy vengeance on this bloody Dane, and let him die some unheard monstrous death.
Make quick dispatch to execute the other. I am sure you will not now be pardoned.
Not I, thou murthering, stony-hearted Dane. I'm resolved to suffer this and more, to do my father or my country good. They gave me life, for them I'll shed my blood.
And they cut off his hands and nose.
Now thus thou hast spit thy venom, bloody king, we do return defiance in thy face.
Sirs, temper well your tongues, and be advised, if not, I'll cut them shorter by an inch. Remember that you both have lost your hands, because your fathers did abuse their tongues in perjury. Go quickly away, and tell your traitorous fathers what I say.
We go, but to thy cost, proud Danish Canute, throughout this isle thy tyranny to bruit.
We go thy cruel butchery to wring, O England, never trust a foreign king.
Exit pledges.
Why laughest thou, Edricus?
I cannot choose to see the villains rave.
No, I must needs laugh to bear my master company.
And enter a messenger running.
What news with thee?
Renowned Canutus, thy forces in the north, which thou didst send against Edmund Ironside, are clean dispersed, and piecemeal overthrown by him, as these letters signify.
Canutus reads and then saith,
'Tis wonderful. What? 20,000 slain of common soldiers. This unwelcome news nips like a hoary frost our springing hopes, and makes my fearful soldiers hang their heads. Come hither, Edricus. Void the company that you and I may talk in secrecy.
Everyone exits apart from Canutus and Edricus.
Edricus, what had I best to do to raze out this dishonourable blot out of the brass-leaved book of living fame? Shall it be said hereafter, when report shall celebrate my noble father's acts, that Canutus did lose what noble Svenus got? Shall it be said that Edmund Ironside, unfriended, poor, forsaken, desolate, did overthrow the power of mighty Canutus, whose wealth was great, friends more, but forces most? Never, since Edmund was a force to bear a massy helmet and a curtal axe, could I return a victor from the field, unless, as I remember, thou betrayedst the gallant stripling once into our hands. And then, had not valor hewed him through our troops, that day had made an end of all our griefs. But now, what now? Oh, tell me if thou knowest, how shall I extribute my stock and name, that after age may not report my shame?
Despair not, noble king. Time comes in time. Know ye not 'tis a deed of policy and fickle chance to cross your mightiness? For else in time you might dismount the queen, and throw her headlong from her rolling stone, and take her whirling wheel into your hand. I tell your grace, chance ever envies wise men, and favors fools, promoting them aloft. But as for this flea spot of dishonor, the greatest monarchs have endured more, even blinking Philip's son and many more, whose repetition was needless to recite.
I prithee, flatter still. On. What more? Speak we of fortune, honest sycophant? Chance favoreth not a fool in favoring thee. Thy flattery is gracious in her eye. Come hither, Edricus. Oh, strange miracle. See you not in the heavens prodigious signs? Look how the sun looks pale, the moon shines red, the stars appear in the perturbed heaven like little comets, and not 12 o'clock. What is the cause then that the stars are seen?
I see them. Well, my lord, yet no cause until it shows the fall of Ironside.
Surely it doth. Look now, they are all gone. 'Tis night, 'tis dark. Beware ye stumble not. Lend me your hand, but first go fetch a torch to light me to my tent. Make haste, I pray.
Exit Edricus.
He's gone to fetch a torch to light the day.
Re-enter Edricus.
My lord, the misty vapors were so thick they almost quenched the torch.
True, as all the rest. I say thy wit is thick. Gross flattery, all soothing sycophant, dost blind thy eyes, and will not let thee see that others see thou art a flatterer. Amend thy life, learn to speak truth. For shame, do not in thy declining age. Children may see thy lies, they are so plain. Oh, while you live, from flattery refrain.
It stands not with my zeal and plighted faith, otherwise to say then, as your highness saith, your grace is able to give all their due, to make truth lie, and likewise make lies true.
I would it lay in me to make thee true, but who can change the Ethiopian's hue?
And with just another one of those delightful comments from Canute there, just to make us like him even more. Canute gives us a lengthy explanation of the logic for why he's going to chop hands and noses off. Just killing them, this lot, they don't care about being killed. They do care about other stuff. And actually, Canute was right. His psychology was bang on. The pledges immediately say, no, just kill us, just kill us. And I love the bit where Canute has to turn to Stitch and says, no, don't give them a weapon. It's like, here, let me just hand you the gun. No!
I don't think he's the brightest bloke in the world.
Yeah, so, lots of stuff going on here as we get into just gratuitous hand and nose chopping. As I think Aliki put in the chat, the special effects on this is hands are relatively straightforward. Noses, I'm thinking you've got to have masks or something for them, because then you can have something straightforward. Yeah, lots of thoughts. Lynn, then Rachael, I think.
Yeah, this does not bode well. This does not bode well for Canutus. I mean, didn't Uskataulf say? Didn't I say, as Uskataulf in the first scene, the English are tough and they're proud, and they care about justice, and if you rule them with justice and dignity and lenience, it'll work out. But if they respect kings but not tyrants, and here is Canutus being a tyrant. It's just like, did I teach you nothing?
Yeah. And Canute is really key. This whole thing about flattery as well. We were talking about flattery in the first scene. He's really starting to drink deep of this flattery, and then going, no, this is bad stuff. But no, he still quite likes it, and. Yeah, weird things going on, and also signs and portents. It's not looking good. Rachael, then Lois.
Just how creepy if you time this humor is so well timed to be creepy when Stitch says everyone will take them for Frenchmen. Like, he just has to get one last joke in before the grimness, and then also this interesting little piece of dialogue from Pledge 1. Now thou hast spit thy venom, bloody king, we do return defiance in thy face. And I wonder if that is supposed to be a cue for him to spit into the king's face. And just how interesting that is, because he's already said that he's not going to kill them. So it's kind of like they have nothing left to lose because he's taken everything from them but their lives.
And if you've got a bleeding nose, then you've got plenty of stuff to spit out at the king as well. I mean, that could be an incredibly grim moment, actually. There's a very messy stage. I mean, whoever's got the mop handy, this is a health and safety nightmare. I'm just pointing out. Lois.
Yeah, I realized belatedly that I played the last bit of that scene completely wrong, and actually I don't think we got it. What Canutus is actually doing is pretending to see all these portents to see whether Edricus will go along with it. And, he even sends Edricus off to get a torch, but his comment is, in fact, it's not. None of these things are happening, and he was just doing it. He loves testing people. He did it with his future wife, and he's just done it again. See if you're going to agree with me about all this rubbish.
Oh, I like that. Aliki.
Well, I mean, that's the one thing that popular culture has retained of Canute, right? Is that he gets flattered and he calls the flatterer's bluff to some extent. Oh, really? I'll just sit down in the sea then and tell the tide to leave me alone. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think we'll probably get that one later. I can't believe they wouldn't do it.
Other thoughts before we go into our final sequence? Helen.
I had a bit of problem with the Edricus on the dismount the queen, but what he's talking about is being a woman. He's saying you might as well become a woman. So I'm not quite sure what the rolling stone is, but the whirling wheel is. It's the female tasks of spinning and weaving, I think. No? Lois knows. Lois knows.
No, he's talking about fortune. Fortune, the fortune's wheel, the rolling stone that fortune stands on, and you can get rid of her. Dismounting the queen. It's Queen Fortune. Yeah.
Oh, right. Good. Thank you.
Excellent. Any more for any more? Dan, were you waving? No, just a spasm.
Thumbs up to Lois on that one.
Okay, let's go into Act 3, as it's labelled. Act 3, Scene 1. Enter at one door the Archbishop of Canterbury, and at the other door the Archbishop of York. It's important that they're kept separate, otherwise the two will annihilate one another. No, sorry, I'm being silly now. Ignore me. Enter two archbishops.
Why bends not the presumptuous knee of York when Canterbury speaks? Cannot the curse of God and me, the metropolitan, under the Pope of all dominions within this realm of England, cause thee fear, proud irreligious prelate? No, my power stretcheth beyond thy compass, even as much as Rome doth mine. Then quiver when I curse, and like a child indeed prostrate thyself before my feet, that thy humility may move me to absolve thy former sins and set thee free from hell's damnation.
Traitor to God and to thy lawful king, where thou dost bless, I curse. Where curse, I bless. As thou art bishop, my commission stretcheth as far as thine. And let me say, unless thou leave thy contumelious threats further than mine, no, Canterbury, no, I humble me to God and not to thee, a traitor, a betrayer of his king, a rebel, a profane priest, a Pharisee, a parasite, an enemy to peace, a foe to truth and to religion. I say, I will not bend myself to him, and such a one art thou, and therefore here, unless repentance bend thy stubborn heart, I here pronounce the curse of God and man upon thy soul. So farewell and mend.
York offers to depart.
Stay, York, and hear me speak. Thy puffy words, thy windy threats, thy railing curses light upon thy stubborn neck, unless with speed thou dost forsake the part of Ironside and cleave unto Canutus, and more, submit thyself to me, thy head, and to our mother church. Reply not, bishop, for I seal thy lips with my irrevocable bitter curse. if one untoward word slip from thy tongue.
So heapest thou coal of fire upon thy head, and blessest me with cursing impious priest. Oh, let me die, whenas I leave my king, a true-born prince for any foreigner.
Oh, I could eat thee! Now my crozier staff longs to be pelting that old hoary pate. My hands do quake with rage.
Royal champion, for the devil and Canutus, I fly not from thy curses but thy strokes.
And exit York.
I'll follow thee with curses and with clubs.
And exit Canterbury. And in the red corner, we have from the bishopric, the Archbishop of Canterbury. And in the blue corner... And yeah, you could almost do the sort of, Mortal Kombat sort of, for each of these blows that they're sort of throwing at each other. There's a lot of fun here. They're on opposite sides of who's supposed to be king. I love
crozier, one of those processional croziers, carried a lot of heft.
Mm. Yeah,
and they're neither of them young, so I can see him swinging it round and the weight of it carrying him in a complete circle.
Yeah, and York is the one going, look, I sticks and stones, but a crozier will hurt me. I'm off. Alan.
It'd be bloody difficult to stage without it becoming farcical.
I think it's supposed to be. I don't think any of this can be taken as too... I mean, it might start off, but yeah, it's... The insults just get sillier. Yeah, anyway, I don't want to linger here too long. I think it was just... I couldn't not knock that. That's one to detach and use somewhere else. I love that. Priests fighting. Love. Anyway, Act 3, Scene 2. Enter Canutus, Southampton, Edricus, Uskataulf, Swetho. Let's see if he says anything. Herald at arms and soldiers.
Go to yon city which we mean to sack, New Troy, the state of Edmund Ironside. Command a parley at the city gates. Bid them choose whether they will let us in, or else withstand the utmost of our wrath and be consumed to ashes and to coals with flaming fire, which whilom did destroy their mother's city, quondam called Troy.
And the herald departed from the king to the walls, sounding his trumpet. The bailiffs appear above.
Canutus, King of England, Prince of Danes, greets you by me, his trusty messenger, commanding you to serve him as your lord, bidding you wait on him as on your king, and you shall be entreated lovingly. If not, he is prepared with fire and sword to raise your city. Thus he sends you word.
Go tell your master, thus we answer him. His ships that proudly ride upon the Thames shall anchor on the ground where he abides, borne by the bloodshed of our carcasses, and we, compelled by thirst to suck the stream of this fair river dry, so that his men may dry-shod march over the floating deeps, ere we will let him enter in these gates, or ope our lips to call him sovereign. Tell him we're resolved to keep him back. Tell him we are no traitors, but are sworn to be King Edmund's liegemen while we live, and if he stay, that shall he soon perceive.
Advise you, bailiffs, what is best to do. Incur not danger with security. Canutus is your king, then him obey, and to his gentle message say not nay.
We are resolved to put Canutus back. He comes not here, his threats are spent in vain.
I fear your wills will put your wits to pain, and you repent it when it is too late.
You have your answers. Soldiers, guard the gate.
And so the bailiffs depart, and the herald returns to the king.
Their answer, good lord, is negative, full of haughty courage and disdainful pride. This little peace hath brought their stomachs up, which makes them to disdain your princely mercy.
And dare they thus refuse my proffered grace? Set they so light by my commandment? Assault the city, batter down the walls, scale all the turrets, rush the gates asunder. Why slack ye soldiers? Who is foremost man to give a valiant onset on the town?
Rather important stage direction, apologies for the delay. Assail the walls, enter a messenger.
Worthy commander of these warlike troops, Edmund your foe is coming hitherward with a choice company of armed men, intending to surprise you suddenly.
He is welcome, though I hope unto his cost. We are beholding to his excellence that he vouchsafe for safeguard of his town to yield himself without compulsion. We are as forward and as fit as he to give his force an equal counterbuff, though he suppose to take us unawares. Now, noble lords, or never, show your might to put his men to sword and him to flight.
He that gives back, let him be slain by his next fellow that doth second him. If Englishmen at first begin to fly, Southampton willingly for them will die.
This day shall manifestly be known how Danes have better hearts than Englishmen, and bodies answerable to the same. Else let them lose their everlasting fame.
The day is yours before the fight begins, great and renowned prince, fair England's king. For emulation, which doth sometimes lose, now doth assure you of the victory. See you not how the English lords contend, who should excel in feats of chivalry, and creep up farthest in your highness's grace? On the other side, behold, brave-minded Danes, scorning to o'ermatch in feats of arms, strive who should compass most by power or wit, to amplify your honourable fame. The soldiers are not slothful in this stir, but ready, forward prompt, and fit to fight, expecting gladly that delightsome hour, when they shall grapple with their enemies. Then in assurance of this happy day, arms to the fight, it is in vain to stay.
I do presume on this to win the field, but all my striving is to get the crown.
And there's the sound of a drum within.
Soft! What churlish drum doth ring so rude a peal within the hearing of our armed troops?
Enter Edmund with soldiers.
'Tis Edmund. Strike up drums and trumpets sound. I'll not delay my hopes with any parley.
There's an alarum. And they fight. And Edmund drives Canutus off the stage. The drum sounds afar off. Act 3, Scene 3. Enter chorus. We've suddenly gained a chorus, attired in black, saying...
Fight is hot, but Canutus is o'ercome, and Edmund hunts him on out from place to place. He flies to Worcester. Edmund follows him. The way is long, and I am waxen faint. I fain would have you understand the truth, and see the battles acted on the stage, but that their length will be too tedious. Then in dumb shows I will explain at large their fights, their flights, and Edmund's victory. For as they strive to conquer and to kill, even so we strive to purchase your goodwill.
More alarums. Enter Canutus flying, Edmund following. They fight. Ooh, ah, The two kings parley, sound a retreat, and part.
Canutus is beholding to the gracious sun, who, grieved to see such heaps of carcasses lie mangled and besmeared in their gore, made haste and went to rest before his time, so that the king, for want of light, agreed to part until Aurora might raise the lark. And now 'tis morning, and they join to fight.
Alarum. Enter Canutus at one door and Edmund at the other. They fight. Canutus gives back and flies. Enter the soldiers of Edmund, pursuing Canutus and his lords. Edricus, boo hiss, takes a dead man's head upon his sword's point, holding it up to Edmund's soldiers. They fly. Enter Edmund again, cheering them up, and makes Canutus fly.
Edricus, perceiving Canutus to have the worst, and Edmund like to triumph in their fall, out of the bowels of a traitorous heart, brought forth his subtle, dangerous stratagem. Whilst the two battles dealt the dole of death, and Edmund in the forefront stoutly fought, with words encouraging his soldiers, and with rude strokes discouraging the Danes, Edricus took up an English dead man's head, and sticking it upon his bloody sword into the vanguard of King Edmund's troops, held his despiteful and most speedy course, telling the soldiers Edmund Ironside was slain, bidding the soldiers yield or fly the field and trust unto their heels. The soldiers in amaze began to fly. Then Edmund, hearing of this stratagem amongst the thickest of his enemies, gave notice that he lived, a conqueror. His soldiers, taking heart, returned and fought. His enemies, despairing, run away. Edmund returns in triumph on the stage, but Canutus returns in passion and in rage. What after happens with your patience? The entering actors give intelligence.
And we'll just briefly reintroduce a character. Act 3, Scene 4, we have Edmund Ironside with lords and soldiers.
Praised be the eternal bulwark of this land, the fortress of my crown, in whom I trust, that hath thus discomfited my foes, by his omnipotent all-conquering arm, and worthy lords, triumphant warriors whose valours echo through the mouth of fame, and writes your worthies in the book of life, maugre the envy of detraction. We render hearty thanks to each of you for fighting in our rights with such bold spirits. Continue to be valiant, and if God make us once happy in a peaceful reign, I'll guerdon every soldier bounteously that lifts a weapon to defend our right. Let us not loiter opportunity, but follow Danish Canute and force him fly. On, march afore, sound trumpets, strike up drums, let shrieking fight tell Canute that Edmund comes.
And the soldiers shout and exit. Then, yeah, so busy time. I've noted down Act 3, Scene 3 as a director's delight. It's just full of fun, full of business. I quite like the chorus, actually. I just like the chorus being really honest, going, okay, we could show you all, we could do this in drama, but we thought it's going to be a bit boring. It'll be quite long if we did it all, so we'll do it in theatre, bit of show, bit of description, that'll be that. Bish bash bosh, job's a good one. And I approve. I heartily approve. I don't know, maybe there was more in previews and then they just cut it down. That I would heartily respond to. I really enjoyed that. Alan.
I was just thinking, if you could find someone like Murray Walker, the Formula One commentator, or one of the racing commentators to do the chorus, it would work, or it could work.
Yes, you could. If we're going for the comedy side of things, I mean, it's also these dumb show elements. They may overlap more with the actual dialogue of the chorus too, so that it's more descriptive rather than then and. It's just all piled together. Could just have so much fun with that. Yeah, and then Edmund's quite happy. Well, as we know, he's cheered everybody up. I don't know how. Maybe he brought some DVDs, a bottle of wine. Everyone gets to sit around and have fun. A barbecue. That's what he did. He brought on a barbecue. That's what it was. Anyway, sorry, I'm going to stop being silly. We're outside New Troy, outside London, and we have this squaring off of within the city and without, and how are we feeling, Helen?
I think that the biggest question is one of tone. Just where do we pitch this? Do we have comic interludes in a very serious play? Do we play the whole thing for laughs? It could all be sent up tremendously. but I suppose you could even play the Archbishop seriously. I mean, the Archbishop of Canterbury, up to that point, has been a serious person. So I think the big decision for the director is tone.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's interesting because the semi-clownish figure that we've got with Stitch, is there in an incredibly dark scene. So even the humour there, it's dark humour. And I'm not sure how much of this, feels like it's drifting into comedy. Most of it's so far been quite level. And plenty of stuff to play with. But yeah, the Canterbury and York scene, our first impulse is to play comedy, but actually maybe we're being unfair on it. Lois.
Yeah, I suppose one way to look at it also is that it's a view of the period before the Reformation. I mean, it's hostile to the Catholic Church hierarchy anyway. So, that could just be part of that particular attitude without necessarily reflecting on the play as a whole.
I mean, the play's got lots of problematic elements that we've sort of skipped over a bit because it's really, really consciously landing on foreigner a lot in ways that are really quite uncomfortable. And that's a continuing narrative throughout it. That doesn't necessarily mean that can't be played for a solid effect. It is not a great message to be giving for anything that we're doing today. Rachael.
Is Elizabeth on the throne yet when this was written, or was she being courted by the King of Spain?
She is. Elizabeth is well established by now, regardless of when it's dated,
and well past marriageable age.
Yeah. Long since past. Even the earliest exponents would be pushed to push it that early. Yeah, we're drifting in the general direction of final thoughts. But any more thoughts on these closing scenes? Action, excitement, adventure, really wild things. I'd say genuinely enjoying it when it gets active.
How big's your cast if you're going to do massive army dumb shows?
Well, that's a really good question because the dumb shows themselves are primarily just a couple of people having a one-to-one sword fight with other people about. It's very non-specific. So I don't think, actually, I think the thing about the chorus is also to expand on a production that maybe isn't designed to be played with lots of people on stage at the same time. It's been quite self-contained, and I haven't looked at how the doubling functions. But I think this is quite fleet of foot, actually. I think this might go down to a relatively small number. I mean, relatively, and still probably in double figures. I don't know what the logistics on it yet, because we haven't really dug into it. Lois?
Yeah, there was somebody I read once, I think it was Martin Holmes, who thought that every company had one or two very, very good swordsmen, and that they mainly did these battle scenes by getting them on stage with everybody else kind of hanging around. And, they didn't necessarily play major roles, even though they could sometimes. It seems possible. I mean, that would be the way you gave the effect of a tremendous battle. Everybody else just kind of running across the stage and being chased by somebody.
Yeah, because the only two people fighting here are Canute and Edmund. Nobody else does any fighting. They do a lot of running about. Even Edricus, all he does is come on with the head on a stick to scare people. Okay, let's go into final thoughts. We're halfway through the play. We made good time with it. It's fleet of foot, actually. It was a slightly longer text than the play we were looking at earlier in the week, but it actually went along very, very swiftly. Aliki, do you have any final thoughts about the play so far?
I'm going to come back to what Helen called the question of tone, and I think it's really interesting how you play it. Personally, I don't think you could play it either as fully farcical or as fully serious, and I would really enjoy playing around with that.
Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yes. I will third that I think, yeah, tone is really up in the air, but it's something you kind of need to make a decision what you're at least trying to do. And then you put it in front of the audience and actually they decide. But I do think there's some interesting acting opportunities in this text. The Canutus seems to be basically trying to be a good king, but he does have a cruel streak, quite a cruel streak. And he's vulnerable to the flatteries of Edricus. So, trying to make that character work as a whole person and not have the seams show, that would be a great challenge for an actor. Edricus is a fun part. He's everything Uskataulf said he was in the beginning. He's just pretty much the lowest of the low, but very charming. He must be really charismatic to get people on his side. So, and even the little parts, his Edricus's peasant parents and Stitch, although it's not a big part, it might be fun. So yeah, I see some really kind of fun and challenging acting opportunities in this.
Dan, any final thoughts?
Yeah, to go on the tone, I find it very hard not to have some of this. If one were to try to play this straight, I find it hard not to be able to find some of it's funny, because it's a bit over the top at times. So yes, fourth, the idea that it's going to be somewhere in between. I think it can't be completely farcical. I definitely think it should be serious at times. This is a historical play that deals with some weighty I guess there's some weighty relationships in here, and I think it would be a mistake to try to make a farce out of this. I'm really enjoying it so far. I can't wait for tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm slightly confused by this question of tone. I mean, if you treat it as a farce, the play's dead in the water. I mean, it's totally screwed. But there isn't actually that much in the play that is, we've one overtly, but potentially comic scene with the wife and Stitch and Edrick. But even that is actually quite dark, especially with the violence. And yes, we've got a couple of warring clerics. But actually, apart from that, there are barely any jokes. I think it's more that there is a just the way the play lands is. I'm not seeing it as in that way. I'm just in terms of what I'm seeing from the text. But please explicate more on this, because I'm not understanding the point.
I mean, for me on my side, just when I made the point, I made the point in the chat of just the insult lists, just as an example. It's just a little, because we this is a recurring theme in this play, and it just goes a little bit more than is necessary at times. So little things like that tend to make me believe that at some point you start to think, okay, all right, that's enough. How can that not be played for a little bit of, or at least taken as a little bit humorous, that they just keep going on and on about calling out people. Also in the cutting off scene, the pledge scene, there was, I found that I can't recall the specific line, but I found there was something there that lightened up the tone.
Oh yeah, there's a Stitch, and a few other bits and pieces. But yeah, that's maybe more a question of where we put our blue pencil in. If we find that something's just going on, I found it was more the opposite. I found I was just getting a bit bored. Helen.
Yeah, I think that there is no real necessity for the pledges to be children. In fact, every reason that they should be fully adult men.
Yeah.
And I think that it would be very, very difficult to play the clerical battle without some part of the audience corpsing.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not, that the whole scene structure, that it becomes.
Yeah. Oh yes. I mean, they're not comic. They're very serious people. But
Yeah, I mean, it's not to say we're afraid of some laughter in the play. It's just, yeah. Anyway, I think we've gone on a tangent, perhaps, which we must pull back from. Lois, any final thoughts?
Well, it's a fast moving, quite entertaining play, and I think it's probably following Geoffrey of Monmouth fairly closely, though I don't know. Yeah, there are bits in it that I don't know if it's exactly tone, but I do wonder what the audience reaction would be, for example, to those two fathers that we noted early on saying if they die, they die, about leaving their sons. Would this be a wonderful example of Roman stoicism, or would this discredit everything else they do in the play? There are things like that where I just don't know. I mean, sometimes the cruelty, the fact that some of the cruelty seems to be done by comic characters, reminds me of Robert Wilson's plays. I think there was quite a lot of nasty behavior in that from the clowns, or even the kind of cruelty we saw in Heywood earlier in the week, beating, people taken away to be whipped and beaten for next to nothing. I mean, is the audience just used to this kind of thing? Does it even think it's funny sometimes if the wrong person or the right person is being whipped? I don't know. But clearly it would have a rather different effect on a modern audience, probably.
Briony, final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know what it says about me, but I'm definitely more engaged by this one. I think I like a bit of violence sometimes. The cutting off noses bit was very good. I enjoyed the parents as well. That was a funny little comic interlude that happened. There was not a great deal of Edmund thus far, considering his titular status. We saw him twice. Well, and a few more times with some fighting, but yeah. I do like the fact that the casual racism is not like really deeply embedded. It would be super easy to just get rid of that.
Rachael, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I really like the scene. I love that clown scene with Edricus and Stitch and the wife. I think the comedic scenes, if like actors, the more they commit to them and are serious with them, the bigger laughs you could get from those scenes, like how we were talking about tone. Like, I don't think you have to send it all the way up, but I think for that scene, there is a lot of comedy in that. You might have it also in just a slight amount in that other scene, the hands and nose scene. Not like just because it's so the spitting at somebody and that the guy makes a joke about syphilis in that part. They're so unexpected and off kilter. And then just the two old guys fighting. But I think I don't know. I like this so far. It's doing a lot of interesting stuff. I also like, even though this is like very violent and it's sort of repulsing, like we had yesterday with Parliament of Bees and the cutting off some guy's legs. Even though the violence is kind of repulsive, it's also the scene where he puts some random guy's head on the sword to do these interesting military tactics. Yeah, I don't know. That's just that one character is just so interesting.
Yeah, it's that whole sequence with Canute going in great detail about why he's going to do what he does, and then there's an awful lot of build up for the actual cutting off of limbs. It's an incredibly long scene for this play. It's pretty much twice the length of most other scenes. So it's supposed, I'm really interested actually how that all would flow. In terms of pacing. Leo, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I love the it's a mix. There's lots of variation, which includes the violence and the comedy and the weird, not weird, but the complicated relationships going on, and Canute's gradual just becoming darker. I quite enjoyed that, or at least his darkness being revealed slowly. And yeah, I also like that it is quite fast moving, because other history plays I've read have felt a lot slower than this, so it's nice.
Yes, history plays can come in a whole variety of shapes and sizes. They don't have to take an entire day. Alan, any final thoughts?
Not an awful lot to add, although I was very grateful that the playwright didn't go with the temptation that you would get with the Edrick, his wife, and Stitch of writing it in yokel. It was at least readable.
Yes, always nice when it's legible, isn't it? Helen, did I go to you earlier? I can't remember.
Well, no, but I jumped in.
Well. Do you have any additional?
No. I've said my piece.
Excellent.
Out of turn.
Well, that's all right. It happens. We're all friends here. So yes, we have one more session. Again, not a desperately long play overall. We're managing to squeeze in 2 history plays in 1 week. So it's we're getting a lot packed in. So all that remains is to thank all these wonderful readers for their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye.
Cheering them up.